Top story this hour. President Donald Trump is keeping up the pressure on Iran as U.S. forces build up in the Gulf. Trump says he told Iran that it has to do two things to avoid military action. Number one, no nuclear, and number two, stop killing protesters. Trump added that it would be great if Washington didn't have to use the fleet heading to the Gulf. Trump is pushing to get Tehran to negotiate a deal on its nuclear program. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister has warned that its armed forces are ready with their fingers on the trigger to immediately and powerfully respond to any aggression. To discuss this further, we can bring in now Rochelle Ferguson Bouyahi, our international affairs editor. It's great to see you. So, Trump's been sending sort of conflicting messages here. Tensions remain high. What are Iran's options for dealing with the U.S. at this point?
Well, you're right, Catherine. I'll first start off with saying these mixed messages coming through. What we saw on Thursday from Donald Trump was what has been, said to be something of a climb down, coming down on the temperature. Trump saying that we hope as much as we can to avoid military action with Iran. That was echoed today by Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi. He spoke in Istanbul this morning saying, look, we welcome fair talks, but he did have his conditions. Let's have a listen to that and we can speak afterwards.
I should also state unequivocally that Iran's defensive and missile capabilities and Iran's missiles will never be the subject of any negotiations. I do not think any country is prepared to compromise with anyone over its own security and defense. The security of the Iranian people is no one else's business, and we will preserve and expand our defensive capabilities to whatever extent is necessary to defend the country.
Abbas Araghchi speaking there. You can see that the spanner in the works, if you will. Araghchi there saying that ultimately our nuclear enrichment program, our ballistic missiles program are not up for discussion with Donald Trump. That, of course, is an issue for Donald Trump because, as you mentioned, he wanted two things for Iran, the Iranian regime, to stop killing protesters who have taken to the streets in recent weeks, and also for a curtailing or a halting, if they will, of Iran's nuclear program. Where does that leave things then as they stand? Tensions are high, as we've mentioned. What are the options for the US? Could we see them going ahead with a military intervention, as we've heard could be a possibility? Listening to some political analysts recently, there are several options. And let's go through not all of those, but some of those. Of course, there's been the option on the table for these targeted surgical strikes on certain key bases in Iran, notably those belonging to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, also on nuclear installations. That could be one of the moves that the United States makes. The idea would be that an already weakened regime is eventually toppled and that Iran would, move forward with a genuine democracy. I mean, that, of course, is the ideal scenario for the United States. The fact is, though, that, a genuine democracy is not easy to come by. We've seen that in Iran, not in Iran, Iraq after US intervention. We've seen that also in Libya as well. So this is a very idealistic idea, but it's one that, the United States may put on the table. A second would be the idea of keeping the Iranian regime in place, but shifting their policies, if you will. And that would entail the Iranian regime no longer supporting militia within the region, of course, stopping this awful repression on protesters when they do come out in the streets to talk about what they're disgruntled about. And equally, in addition to doing that, curb their nuclear program. We heard her actually there saying that this is not going to be a possibility. The third thing would be ultimately a regime collapse. The United States has said that they're not looking for a regime collapse, but could there be, a military rule in Iran eventually? That would mean a taking over by Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Many options on the table. As you say, there is a lot of toing and froing between the US and Iran in terms of this war of words, but it's anybody's guess at this stage whether there'll be a US military intervention or not.
Now, Rochelle, all of this is calling spurs Sparring calls, excuse me, for diplomacy from regional actors. Is that correct?
Well, that's absolutely correct. I mean, let's talk about the latest diplomatic efforts. They were taking place in Istanbul. We looked at Arakshi speaking there earlier. You had the Turkish, top diplomat, you might say, speaking there as well, Hakan Fidan. Let's have a listen to him because he wanted the US to heed a particular warning. Let's have a listen to Fidan.
We see that Israel is trying to persuade the U.S. to launch a military attack on Iran. Israel's efforts carry the potential to cause great harm to the fragile stability in our region. We hope the U.S. administration will act with common sense and not allow this to happen. Israel must end its destabilizing policies in the region.
So Turkey, they're calling on the US not to be influenced by its ally Israel, saying that, if these tensions escalate between the US and Iran, ultimately it's going to put a very fragile, situation in a region which is already particularly unstable. This is, of course, in line with Turkey's rhetoric that they've had from the start. The US and Iran need to get round the negotiating table. They need to look at the issues that they have one by one. Let's be honest, this is another opportunity for Turkey to carve out its role as a mediator. We've seen Turkey play a key role when it comes to preserving this fragile ceasefire between Israel in the Gaza Strip. Turkey also, just a final word for our viewers there, is concerned about its border, Catherine. It has a 500-kilometre border with Iran. It doesn't want any issues spilling over into Turkey. So, Turkey they're saying to the US, let's get round the table with Iran and let's avoid escalation at all costs.